If Bernie Sanders loses this Democratic primary, the media will have played no small role in his loss. From his announcement that he was going to start campaigning, and even before that, back to 2016, the media has been priming their viewers to hate Bernie Sanders. CNN and MSNBC, I'm looking at you. Whether it's saying that Bernie Sanders' win is like the fall of France to Germany, comparing Bernie supporters to brown shirts, saying that Bernie bros are more aggressive and toxic than every other candidate's supporters, even though that is patently false. Whether it's saying you want to see Michael Bloomberg attack Bernie Sanders with a mace, whether it's saying Bernie Sanders makes your skin crawl and you don't know why. I could go on, and just relitigating all of that makes my skin crawl. The fact that they describe Bernie Sanders in this way to make viewers hate him is disgusting. So this is what they want. They want people to hate Bernie Sanders because if Bernie Sanders was ever elected to the presidency, or any candidate like Bernie Sanders, the media would fundamentally change. And they don't want that. They don't want that. The people in corporate media's lives would not fundamentally change because they're millionaires and billionaires. Their taxes would go up and they would still have money left over. And by some money left over, I mean still have millions and billions of dollars to do whatever they want in their life. Whatever their mind thinks of, they could have that. So anything that challenges the status quo, the corporate structure, they don't want that. Which is why they are so insistent on hating on Bernie Sanders. So an article came out recently from In These Times, and I'll put it up on the screen here. CNN's coverage of Sanders was 3 times more negative than Biden following their big primary wins. A tale of two media narratives. Joe Biden's ascent into front-runner status is often portrayed as an organic consequence of big-time endorsements and an untapped desire for a more centrist and electable candidate. But a survey by In These Times finds that CNN has portrayed Bernie Sanders more negatively than Biden, suggesting that media slant itself may play a role in Biden's rise. Shocker. In the 24 hours following his massive win in Nevada, Sanders received 3.26 times the proportion of negative CNN coverage than Biden did following the latter's South Carolina win, despite the two wins being by similar margins. Sanders received more coverage after his win than Biden did, after his 419 mentions to 249, but a larger share of Sanders' mentions were negative and fewer positive than Biden's. The above 3.26 figure was arrived at by comparing negative coverage as a proportion of total coverage for both candidates. So the article goes on to talk a little bit about the methodology that they use and also discuss a little bit about CNN's viewership, which apparently is on average 1 million viewers during prime time. So I wonder why it is that they cover two similar candidates in terms of the numbers that they had. They covered one candidate significantly more negative than the other candidate. It's because, as Bernie says, he's an existential threat to the structure that they have there. He's an existential threat to the corporate owners' lives. And they don't want that. They do not want that at all. This is an abject failure of the media. This is a miscarriage of journalism. The fact that CNN can go ahead and call themselves a news network despite covering Bernie Sanders 3.26 times more negatively than the other candidate in the race? How dare they? They've been priming their viewers day after day after day. And believe this, it probably isn't just after the wins that it was 3.26 times more negative than Bernie Sanders. Multiply that by 365 every single day in a year that they're covering Bernie Sanders more negatively than Joe Biden. So when Bernie Sanders says that the system is rigged, or when Sanders supporters say that the system is rigged, we're not talking about them changing vote tallies. We're talking about this. We're talking about the fact that they cover Bernie Sanders significantly more negative than any other candidate. We're talking about the fact that when people go to actually go out and vote, their votes are suppressed by 5-hour wait times in lines when they actually want to vote. They complain about the youth turnout being low. It's because anytime someone on a college campus tries to vote, they have to wait 3 hours to do so. They're talking about Bernie districts that would have gone strongly for Bernie, polling locations somehow closing, and then them telling the voters the day of, that their polling location has changed. Broken voter machines, things like this. That's what we're talking about. Somehow, some way, it just so happens that anytime there's some sort of flaw or mistake, it negatively impacts Bernie. When the results favor Biden significantly, they will call the race the second polls close. And this is something CNN does. As soon as the time hits, they have a countdown clock because in typical CNN fashion, they have to make everything like a game show. They have a countdown clock. As soon as that goes off, Biden's the winner. But when it comes to Bernie Sanders, Michigan Secretary of State has to come out and say, well, we might not have the results for a few days now. We're not really too sure when they're going to come out. The system is rigged, and it's obvious that it's rigged against Bernie Sanders. So if he loses this election, blame the media, the mainstream media, because they'll have a heavy hand in what goes down. And they'll have a heavy hand in November if Bernie Sanders loses and Joe Biden's the nominee and Joe Biden loses to Donald Trump, a person they propped up in 2015 and 2016. So this is why we need to support independent, progressive media. And now's your chance to subscribe to join the political revolution against mainstream media. They're not going to cover the elections fairly, and you got to rely on independent, progressive media. So subscribe now and leave a comment about your thoughts to the blatant bias that CNN and other mainstream media has against Bernie Sanders, and we'll see you next time.